Vanderbilt and Missouri, not exactly the game people expected for college game day this late in the season, but I think it's going to be a crowd pleaser. I think Corey agrees. So let's talk about it on this crossover edition of Locked On Vandy and Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Oh, hey, all you true sons and daughters and all you Vanderbilt Commodore fans as well. It's John Miller from Locked On Mizzou. I'm here with Corey Burton from Locked On Vandy. We got a lot of fun here. We got a beefy ep for you here, I would say, today. I want to ask Corey, first of all, among a bunch of other things, we're going to get to a whole bunch of it. How exactly aggressive is Vanderbilt going to be against this aggressive Missouri running attack? We're going to make predictions of the game, all kinds of stuff to get to here on this crossover edition of Locked On Mizzou. Real quick, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first ticket purchase. And I got to say, you're going to need that $20 off. You're going to go to Nashville on Saturday. I was thinking, maybe this was a road trip early in the season that I could get some cheap tickets to. Not the case here, Corey. So
definitely not.
It seems to me both offenses have the advantage in this game. Do you agree with me? What's your take?
Yeah, I do. And they have the advantage for the exact same reason. They're both extremely tough running the ball for different ways of running the ball, but both two of the strongest teams in the conference at running the ball. Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts are a lethal duo that will give everybody fits, including Vanderbilt's defense, and they'll have to really game plan for that. And then, of course, the rushing attack led by Diego Pavia, Cedric Alexander, and the things they can do in the option game and the things they can do formationally and things and blocking scheme wise to really put defenses in conflict. That's what makes Vanderbilt dangerous. So I'm excited to see this. If you like running, if you like offensive line play, this is the game for you to watch for sure.
Yeah, and to your point on both teams running the ball very differently, Missouri can be a very outside zone stretch type of team. I think, I would say it's fair to say Vanderbilt runs a little bit more at you for sure. Yeah. I'm just curious, Corey, I thought Auburn, especially in the second half, once they kind of realized that Missouri wasn't going to do much outside of the first 10 to 15 yards in the field, they got really aggressive, particularly against those Missouri runs. Lots of blitzing in the second half. Do you see Vanderbilt being that aggressive, or do you see maybe them trying to make Missouri march the ball downfield a little bit more?
I think it's a combo of both. I think Steve Gregory and Clark Lee, that duo of defensive coordinating, they do a good job of mixing it up. And they blitz heavy in certain situations, and then sometimes they'll play off. Against LSU, they dared them to run the ball. They were not going to let those receivers beat them, so they put more people back in coverage and had them rally down to the run. Now, it did cause LSU to rip off a few big runs, but for the most part, they held that rushing attack in check, aside from a few big chunk plays there. But what they really did was with the edge guys and at certain times, certain down and distance situations, certain points of the field, they brought intense heat and really got after Garrett Nussmeier. I think it's going to be the opposite of that against Missouri. They're going to be heavy on the run. And I think they're going to constrict the field and try to limit that space for Missouri and say, hey, we dare you to beat us over the top. You don't have Luther Burden anymore. You don't have Theo Weiss anymore. We dare you to come after us. You don't have Brady Cook. You don't have that passing attack. We dare you to do that. And if you hit some big plays in that, so be it. If LSU hit some big plays in the running game, so be it. Was kind of the mantra last week. So their game plan is going to be predicated towards Ahmad Hardy, Jamal Roberts, not letting them get a ton of space and really kind of clogging up those run lanes on that wide zone, stretch zone scheme that you guys have.
Yeah, I'll just say this from the Missouri perspective. You mentioned, of course, Luther Burden's gone. Brady Cook is gone. I do think Missouri has the playmakers on the outside and the inside to make a defense be able to pay. But sort of like last season, and maybe even statistically more so, Missouri just hasn't taken very many shots. And well, last week against Auburn, it was kind of obvious why. It's tough to take deep shots when you don't have any pass protection. So that's one thing. I'm interested, though, on the explosive play side from Vanderbilt's perspective. You know, I think of Vanderbilt as more of an efficient type of offense. Where do they get their explosive plays from?
They get the explosive plays from being hyper efficient for like 8 plays in a row, 9 plays in a row.
Break a tackle, that kind of thing.
Yeah, break a tackle. Against Alabama, the safeties fit the run wrong and left a massive gap, and Cedric Alexander took it 65 to the house. They'll take a shot every once in a while. They haven't really connected as well on those. You know, as you know from last year's game, the first offensive play for Vanderbilt, they took that shot over the top to Joseph McVay. You know, that's the kind of thing they do. They wait, get you guys to come down against the run, and then they take a shot over the top. If they hit it, great. If they don't, they're going to let you know that they're going to do it. And then eventually those 3, 4, 5-yard runs turn into 10, 12, 15-yard runs, and then one breaks for 50 or 60. And that's kind of how they get their explosive plays. They're not an explosive offense by any stretch.
So since you brought up last year, I'm kind of curious, how much of obviously that was a heartbreaker for Vanderbilt last year, a double overtime game, I believe. Luther Burden had the game-winning touchdown catch there. How much did that game hurt Auburn last year? And do you think is that a game maybe that's stuck in their craw a little bit? Do you think they're thinking revenge at all this season?
I mean, I think they always see this matchup as an important one. Ever since Missouri came into the conference, it was a SEC East battle that they would have. Missouri, 12-4 against Vandy?
Something like that. That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds right.
So it's one of those games, not necessarily revenge. I mean, I guess you could say that. But it was such a hard-fought game. It's like, okay, we think we can just get ahead on this one. It's not any sort of revenge type factor. But the factor, like the same motivation we had for South Carolina, where against South Carolina, you're 0 for your last 16. That sticks in your craw more than like, hey, we're 4-12 against Missouri. That game last year was one that we had in our fingertips and we let it go. We can play a little cleaner and win that thing in regulation. That's kind of the mentality. And right now, being 6-1, ranked 10th in the country, game days there, college football playoffs on the horizon. That's all. I mean, honestly, and this is still surreal for me to say, but that's the motivation for this game. Hey, you get one step closer to the college football playoff, and you beat Missouri. That out of the remaining 5 games on your schedule, that is by far the toughest. And then you get Texas next week, which that game at the beginning of the season was probably one of the toughest, not so much anymore. And then you get Auburn and Kentucky, which, I mean, they're good teams, but I mean, let's be honest. And then Tennessee to end the season. Think about if Tennessee and Vanderbilt are fighting for that playoff spot at the end of the season. Think about how crazy that game is going to be. So
incredible.
And those things are the motivating factors for Vanderbilt. And the 4-12 thing, I think they just want to work back towards getting even in that series too.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And weirdly, it almost seems like if you're a Vanderbilt fan, it's almost like, hey, we got to beat Missouri if we're going to have a special kind of season. Just about any season, really. And well, here we are. That probably it's either at Tennessee or Missouri at home. There, certainly those are your two toughest games left. And like I said, the previous week, Missouri played down in Jordan-Hare Stadium against Auburn. To me, I really need to know about Vanderbilt's offensive tackles in particular. Are they going to be able to hold up against this Missouri pass rush? Let's talk about that and get to even more on this special crossover edition of Locked On Mizzou and Locked On Vandy. But you know what? First, we're going to talk Mazda, who crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. And you can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. And like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. It is Mazda. Move and be moved. And also, let's talk about a Peloton, who is really changing the way fitness is done with the brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. And to me, that's the biggest advantage of this. Is I know a lot of people don't necessarily want to be on display when they're working out. They don't want to go to a gym, but hey, I'd like the advantages of having those kinds of classes and instructions. Well, to me, Peloton is the best of both worlds. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward, and maybe you'll be as ripped as Corey Burton someday. So explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. So, Corey, what do you think about this Vanderbilt pass protection? I'll tell you this, I don't necessarily trust the Pro Football Focus grades, especially in college football. I know you're a big offensive line guy, so you tell me. I know PFF doesn't really like the Vanderbilt offensive line outside of the center, Jordan White. That based on what I've seen, they can't be that weak. But what do you think? That Missouri pass rush, though, is formidable. Damon Wilson and Zion Young in particular. How do you think they'll hold up front against Missouri?
First of all, the PFF thing, I don't ever look at PFF one bit. I think the grading is so. It's so like all over the place.
There's too many games, too many teams. They can't possibly have the staff to get it done. The good staff. There's just no way.
And you're not going to accurately grade offensive lines, especially with an offensive line. And then with an offensive line that has a philosophy of switching sides every play, like good luck with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. I didn't even know that. Wait, hold on. They switch sides every play. The tackles and guards
they do strong
switch.
And quick. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Now that's interesting. Explain more to me in that, because I was totally unaware of that. I'll be honest.
Yeah. So they do strong and quick side, and they flip every play.
Wow.
They most of the time they put their pass protection to the quick side, and then they pull they block down with the strong side, pull. They do a lot of gap scheme stuff. So they'll pull those quick guys around and make stuff with it. Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. I can't believe I didn't notice that. I'm gonna have to be watching that all Saturday now.
Yeah, watch 55. He'll he's your key because he's a mountain of a man anyway.
Okay,
so you'll be able to notice him better than any of the other guys. But he's obviously the strong tackle. He's like 6'8", 340 pounds. He's a behemoth. Him and Cade McConnell, they flip sides. Cade McConnell, the guard who Cole Kubelik is all over. But no, as far as pass protection goes, that was probably coming in to the season the weakest thing that Vanderbilt did is pass pro, and because that's just not their philosophy. Those guys that they got a bunch. When they went into the portal, they got a bunch of guys that are great at run blocking and drive. Like when it comes to run blocking, they will take your butt 15 yards and plant you. But when it comes to pass pro, it can be kind of shaky. That's where the holds come, things like that. So I think the biggest matchup is going to be Isaiah Glass versus either Zion Young or Damon Wilson, depending on who's matched up with them in that given moment. Like that battle is going to be the most pivotal if Vanderbilt wants to do any sort of drop back passing, which they don't do a ton of anyway. They move the pocket, RPO, get the ball out quick, or Diego Pavia is taken off. So when it comes to pass pro, they're going to have to figure out a way to block those guys. Now they've improved throughout the season, but those tackles are going to have, like I said, they're going to have their hands full with those guys. And I think Tim Beck is going to have a good game plan to kind of counterbalance that. Cause this is, I think so far, because I don't think Dylan Stewart was much of a factor. He was supposed to be the best pass rusher they were going to face all year long. But this is probably the best duo that they will face in the pass rush game. How are those guys? Now, my question for you, John, is against the run, how are your edge guys against the run? What does the interior of your defense look like? How do they match up with Vanderbilt's offense? How are they going to stop things from your perspective?
Well, I think Missouri's really solid in just about every aspect of defense for the most part. Early in the year, they gave up some explosives in the passing game, especially, but one big running play too against Louisiana, I believe. But for the most part, this has been a really good Missouri rushing defense, and at times an absolutely dominant and elite unit. But the interesting thing was, well, against Auburn last week, the other Tigers were able to get free with some yards. Definitely were more effective than anybody had been all season. Jam Miller was relatively effective for Alabama, wasn't dominant or anything. I thought Missouri did just fine there. That wasn't the difference in the ball game or anything. So I think Missouri will definitely prevent that front seven, front six, whatever you want to call it. They're going to present a lot of challenges for Vanderbilt, and they're really sound tacklers at linebacker as well. Mm-hmm. If anything, what I'm worried about is Missouri with Josiah Trotter, who's such a good run defender. They can be maybe a little bit overly aggressive against the run at times. So because Vanderbilt has not one, but I would say at least two good tight ends, along with Stowers. I think they got one other good tight end, too. His name escapes me. Yeah, he played well against LSU, I thought.
He was a leading receiver, and he had some blocks, too. Like, he's a force in the run game.
See, I didn't even know he was the leading receiver. I just thought he stood out at times when I was watching.
In that game, he was. He's not usually that.
Yeah, I knew what you meant. Yeah, against LSU, he was the leading receiver. But anyway, just that tight end group there, that's a little worrisome to me, and that would be something if I'm Vanderbilt. Like you say, you move him around a lot, play action. That's something that Missouri has been and could be vulnerable to on Saturday for sure. Anything else you were on the tip of your tongue you're wanting to ask me, by the way, Corey? I feel like I've been hogging the mic.
No, it's all good. So for Missouri's defense, when you guys are going up against the pass, obviously the pass rush accounts for a lot of your success. Is that the reason why the back end has improved this season? Are those guys making plays independent of the pass rush? Like I noticed against Ty Simpson, he didn't have the day that he normally does against defenses.
Right.
His stats were a little bit lower. I mean, sure. He was effective when it mattered.
Right.
And that was the difference in the game.
And that's the thing. So Ty Simpson, you go back and you watch that game. Yeah, the numbers weren't all that impressive, but boy, in those high leverage moments when you needed a big pass into a tiny window or just a perfectly floated ball on fourth down the sidelines, 15, 20 yards, he had it when they needed it. So, I mean, he made some really, really good plays in that ball game. But to your point, it's not as though those guys were just running wide open the entire game. I will say I think Toriano Pride is probably the one guy of the corners that you're going to want to try to throw at more often than not. He's shown a propensity to sometimes get beat deep in particular, but similar to those Missouri linebackers, I think sometimes the free safety, especially in a single high situation, gets a little bit too aggressive. Again, on play action fakes, it seems like Missouri really, the foundation of its defense is run defense, and sometimes they get a little bit too overly aggressive there, in my humble opinion. But you know what? Let's stop farting around, Corey. We got to actually make some predictions and some picks here coming up here in just a little bit. But as I alluded to earlier, we got to talk about Game Time, which is the best place to get college football tickets at the last minute. And here's the thing. Going to the game is fun, but endless queues, hidden fees, price jumping at checkout. Actually getting tickets is sometimes the least pleasurable part about the experience. Well, that's why I use Game Time, where not only do you know exactly what your cost is going to be as you're browsing through, by the way, I really love the zone deals. You pick a section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big money. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets, or really tickets to just about anything with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, Corey, you know what? Before we actually get to the final predictions here, what are the general just strengths and weaknesses, just real quick for Vanderbilt, and I'll do the same thing with Missouri?
Offensively, it's the rushing attack led by Diego Pavia. When they can get a numbers advantage in the option game, that is the overall strength. Defensively, it's in the front four. Your defensive line is the strongest unit, followed by the linebackers. That front seven, front six, whatever you want to call it, is very formidable against the rush. They can get home on a blitz, and they're very well coordinated. And they tackle well in space too.
So on the Missouri side, I think offensively, this is a team that when they're running the ball effectively, they can be a real meat grinder to play. The problem is when you force Missouri to pass, I'm not sure they know who they are yet. And some of that's the inexperience of the quarterback. Some of that is, well, they're just trying to figure out some new guys. I think true freshman Donovan Olubade, for example, he's proven if you've got him one-on-one on the outside, even if it seems like he's not open, he's kind of open. He's that go up and get it, aggressive, high point catch kind of guy. And again, defensively, Missouri, for the most part, has been excellent against the run. But what about against Auburn? We're going to see what's real, I think, for Missouri and Vanderbilt this weekend. So, Corey, I assume you're leaning toward Vanderbilt, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. What's your prediction here?
Well, I didn't give you kind of the weaknesses for Vanderbilt either. Okay. I'll do that real quick, and then I'll make my pick. For Vanderbilt, like their downfield passing, what Alabama forced them into in that game is what they're weakest at. The 5-step drops, the down the field, intermediate to deep passing game where it's sort of a progression. It's just not quite there yet for Vanderbilt. That's probably the weakest part of their offense. Defensively, it's when you're not matching up blitzes and coverages. Sometimes they tend to miscommunicate on some things and leave some wide open gaps and things like that. Like the overall communication between the secondary and the front is just not always there. So sometimes you can catch them in a bust, on especially in the secondary. So that's kind of where the weaknesses lie there. But as far as this game goes, my prediction is this. I think this will be relatively higher scoring. I don't think it's going to be a full-on shootout, like a 40 to 30 something game or a 40 to 40 something game. But I do think it's going to mirror a lot what happened last year, which was a relatively higher scoring game, because both these teams are efficient, but can put points on the board. Like Vanderbilt scored points on every single drive they had against LSU, except for a punt and except for a kneel down. Those are the only two drives they didn't get points throughout the whole game. They scored 31 on LSU, which was a season high against that unit. So I think they're going to score in the 34-31 range, somewhere in that ballpark. And I think Missouri's going to be I think it's going to be like a 31-28 game or 34-31, 34-28 at worst case scenario, because I think both teams can score very effectively. Ahmad Hardy is the best running back in the country, I think. And as a duo, that's probably one of my favorite duos to watch. And as an offensive coordinator, O-line running back guy, the stretch zone, the wide zone is one of my favorite schemes it's my favorite run scheme, because you're attacking that edge. And if Ahmad Hardy can get that vertical cut against the grain, it's going to be dangerous. And Vanderbilt's got to limit that. And I think they will, because Clark Lee understands that. And I think he did a pretty good job of limiting that last year. They didn't have as good of a runner last year as what Ahmad Hardy is. But I think schematically they're going to figure out a way to make those cutback lanes non-existent and force Ahmad Hardy sideways. And it's going to be tough sledding there, I think, for most of the game. He's going to get his yards, of course, but I think it's going to be more of a, here, there, and just not frequently enough to really put significant damage. But I think it's going to be Vanderbilt 34, Missouri 31. Brock Taylor doesn't doink one this year, and he wins it.
Well, that's funny you say doesn't doink one. I don't know how confident
he pushed it left, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I don't know how confident you are in the Vanderbilt kicking game this year, but of course
they've been pretty close this year. Knock on wood. No.
Yeah, Missouri, not so much because, quite honestly, just Robbie Meyer doesn't have all that much experience. Missouri's, starting kicker Blake Craig got injured in the first game, tore his ACL, I believe, so he's out for the season. So if it does come down to a kick, maybe advantage Vanderbilt there. You threw out 31-28, and I smiled because that's what I was thinking. I'll be honest. At the start of this week, I really was feeling fairly pessimistic and thinking that Vanderbilt was probably going to win this game. Maybe it's just my own optimistic nature, but as the week has gone on here, I'm starting to feel better about it for Missouri. I feel like this is an okay matchup for Missouri. I don't think it's a great matchup or anything. Here's something I'm curious if I can ask you, Corey, as an offensive guy. I don't know how much you've seen Missouri the last couple weeks against Bama and Auburn, but have you seen anything worrisome about the Mizzou running game in particular, like up front, or was it just simply that Auburn's front was that good last week, do you think? If you had to choose.
I think Auburn had a really good game plan against them. I think, again, they made it tough for that wide zone to kind of cut back. As I said, like if you can, what I call stringing it along, that's what gives that scheme a lot of fits. If you just string it along laterally and it's the aggressive defenses that try to attack it. And I think where they were able to get some chunk plays, or anytime they get chunk plays, it's because somebody along that line, you get a little bit of imbalance, that crease opens up. And Ahmad Hardy is as good as anybody at slamming on the brakes and finding that crease and getting in there. And that's what makes Missouri dangerous. If you can limit that, it's patience. It's a patience thing. So Auburn was extremely patient in defending that run, letting him get frustrated trying to find that run lane. And then once they found an avenue to attack, they attacked. And then forced the game into Bo Pribula's hands. And then they were able to get after him pass rush. Auburn's got a great defense. Their offense doesn't match it, but they've got a great defense.
Yes, the irony of the Hugh Freeze era. Great defense, but they cannot figure it out offensively. But you know what? I'm hoping Missouri can figure it out offensively, get a victory, but not feeling terribly confident about it. I'm feeling confident this is going to be an entertaining football game and an interesting one to watch one way or the other. So with all that being said, hey, Corey, thanks for coming on. Thanks to all you Vandy fans. Thanks to all you Mizzou fans for making this show your first listen. And for your second listen, check out Chris Gordy's Locked On SEC, of course. Corey and I are frequent guests on the Squad show. So, check him out and check out Gordy's everyday stuff. He's getting a lot of great guests that I'm jealous of lately. He might even get Kevin Durant on one of these days as the Houston Rockets post-game guy. You never know. So with all that being said, stay tuned to Locked On Podcast Network, and Corey and I will have some post games for you on Saturday, Sunday, ASAP. So until then, for Corey Burton, I'm John Miller.